Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Growing Up with Godzilla. My name is Donny Winter, and this is my show where I have conversations with fellow Godzilla fans about how we've grown with the characters over time. I've really enjoyed the show so far because I've had some really interesting and cool conversations, and I've got to learn a lot about people, and I've had opportunities to learn about these films and characters in different ways through other people's perspectives. So today I have my very good friend David McAvoy joining us. Hello, David. How are you doing?
Doing good.
it's
Good.
it's good to have you here.
Yes.
I'm nerding out because we go way, 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 way back. So I'll do the Cliff Notes version of that. So we originally met on my site, Kaiju Galaxy, and potentially other Godzilla websites too. Because back in the early to mid 2000s, the message boards were the hub of the Godzilla fandom, right?
Mhm.
And at a certain point, I think it was like back in 2004, I was super annoyed with how much fighting there was on other forums. So I was like, I'm gonna make my own forum and see how that
Yeah.
goes. And that's how Kaiju Galaxy came into existence. And I ended up making a lot of connections, yourself included. I've had the opportunity to meet many of my friends that I met on there at G Fest as well. I don't think, no, we haven't met at G Fest. Have you been to G Fest?
Sadly, I have never had the opportunity to go. So
Maybe
someday,
one day.
yeah.
Right. So I want to know more about your story first and foremost. So, what brought you to Godzilla message boards way back when?
Oh wow. Well, looking for other people who enjoyed the series. I mean, let's face it, it's kind of a niche thing to be into. I know when I was growing up, I kind of annoyed my friends with it. Um, so,
Me too.
so you go out and you're looking for those connections for other people that are into it that you could talk about all this stuff with. And back then, the message boards were a great way to do that. I really hate that internet subculture, you might say, it seems to have kind of waned a little bit. And we don't. I don't feel like we have the sense of community. I wish we could get that back.
I do think that we've lost something though because of, message boards falling by the wayside. I know for me, one of the big things that I wanted to accomplish with Kaiju Galaxy specifically was creating a space where people could write together. We both are fan fiction writers,
Mm.
and that's one thing that we bonded over, right? And I noticed that in other forums, like fan fiction was just not really celebrated as much as I thought it could be. So I was like, I'm going to create my own forum and maybe we'll do some fan fiction stuff. It worked for a while, but of course, when social media happened, that kind of, you know, took the
It
steam
worked
out
for
of things.
years if you think about
Yeah, I
it. It
mean,
was a lot.
yeah, it did work for, I mean, I created Kaiju Galaxy back in 2004 and it was super active until like 2014-ish. Like I know it was when the first legendary Godzilla film came out. So you wanted to connect with other Godzilla fans. Like what different wavelengths did you want to connect with them on? Like just to talk about the stuff or like collaborative stuff? Elaborate for me.
Well, now I got to reach way back in my memory here.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
going way back.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're old, Donnie.
I know. It's terrifying.
Yeah. So I guess at first it was just wanting to talk about all this stuff that was out there. The early 2000s, when I got into that scene and everything, the Hasey era was just new still. I mean, it was still fresh on everyone's mind. The Millennium era, we were following these films as they were being produced, and like I think that was the real driving force for me was to catch every little tidbit coming out about these new movies. I mean, do you remember what it was like following every single detail of GMK as it came out?
Oh my gosh, yes. I it's so do you remember the site tokyomonsters.com?
No, I don't remember
No.
that.
Oh, that for a good while there, that site was like a very good hub for like they would post like trailers and stills and stuff. And I remember when GMK came out, but I also remember Godzilla Tokyo SOS. Like, because you know me, I'm a Mothra fan.
Oh yeah.
When I saw like Mothra stuff coming out, like my little gay teenage heart was like sobbing and dance. It was ridiculous. It was obnoxious. It was very obnoxious. But yeah, that was a very unique time as a Godzilla fan because the internet wasn't necessarily new, but many of us were new to the internet. So like it was like just absorbing all of this content at that time, especially for some of us who had dial-up internet. And
Oh,
I, David, I waited 6 hours for a trailer for Godzilla Tokyo SOS. And I only got to see like 5 seconds of it.
oh my.
because I had that stupid dial-up internet where like it would kick you off when a phone call would ring through.
Hmm.
It was so frustrating.
Well, I see. We had the internet where nobody was getting through, so I was all right.
Well, like I wish we had that, but my parents were like, "You spend too much time on the damn internet. We're gonna get this technology to kick you off when the phone call comes in." And I'm just like, whatever. So you wanted it first to connect with other Godzilla fans to talk about Godzilla.
Mhm.
What after that? Talk a little bit more about after that.
Got to watching these movies come out and everything, and there was all this different discussion. People don't realize that now GMK was really controversial in the fan base as it was being produced, because you had Ghidorah as the good guy on the side with Mothra, Baragon instead of Rodan, as a lot of fans thought
Oh
should have been
yeah,
replaced. Then of
I
course
remember.
it came out about and Gearus, who everybody wanted, was replaced, and so was Varan. So all this different stuff had gone into it, and there was a lot of conversations back and forth. So I think that a lot of the "this is how it should be" conversations probably fueled a lot of the fan fiction developments that occurred in that era, I suspect. And this was around the time, we mentioned briefly, I think, Kaiju File at one point, Rodan's Roost.
Yeah.
This was the point when C.L. Werner was writing his new era stories, which a lot of new baby fans have no idea what that is like, hanging on pins and needles, waiting to see what the next chapter of a fan fiction is going to be. But that was a
Uh,
big thing. For,
that I would argue that because my first exposure to Godzilla fan fiction was through Rodan's Roost as well.
Mhm.
Like so like C.L. Werner's work, like I was obsessed. The Coming of Began is like one of my favorite stories, and I still will revisit it every now and then, and that started getting me thinking like I'm going to create my own set of stories, my own
Yes,
fanfics.
that's kind
um
of how I jumped in too. It was, is that how we say it? Began? Is it Bagan? Is it?
I say Began, but I've heard people say Bagon.
I
I
called
don't
him
know.
Bacon forever as a kid, but I'm sure that's not right.
Right. Like, well, and since there's no like film adaptation, we don't have like any like official pronunciation that I'm aware of. So Bagan, something. I know that character is a character that fans have been salivating over for decades.
Oh,
And I would think probably one of the most popular scrapped characters, I would say. Unfortunately, scrapped character, but so were you a Godzilla fan before this point?
oh yes,
Yeah,
yes.
do you want to talk about that for a sec?
Oh sure. Um, so I don't remember exactly when I encountered Godzilla as a kid. It was when I was like 3 or 4, if not earlier. Um, I have this very clear memory of seeing a brief part of Godzilla in 1985 as a kid, um, just very briefly. Of course, I every time the original King Kong would come on TV as a kid, I had to watch it, so that was a big impact too. Um, and then slowly, I would get a hold of these uh, dinosaur series that they would do on TV, or TNT's Monster Vision. and
Yes.
familiar with the series through that. Oh yeah, I've still got old tapes in a box somewhere of stuff from like sci-fi marathons they would do, and just all those great nights staying up late watching them, or making
Mm.
sure you caught the next one each day to see what it was about. So it was a big deal. But I was, the only one of my friends that was really into this, at least to the extent that I was. And it was one of those things where, some things you kind of leave behind as you grow up, and other things stay with you. Well, the big G here stayed with me, and much to the chagrin of people around me, I'm sure.
Yeah. I in my group when I was growing up, I was also the only Godzilla fan.
Yeah. Well, and I had my stepdad was a bit of a jerk, truth be told, growing up, and he hated these movies. But let me tell you a story. You talk about growing up with Godzilla and all this crap. Where to make sure he didn't have to put up with the movie, he moved all the clocks in the house around so that I missed the movie.
That is
It
horrible.
was, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god, I am so sorry you had to go through
Oh,
that.
it's okay. He's gone now. Good riddance.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I don't know. Well, I'm thankful that my family or my parents were at least kind of like my conduit that got me into Godzilla in the first place. But I had other family members who were like, especially some like religious family members. I had like a family member be like, "Godzilla's Satan, and you're gonna go to hell for watching that. You like Mothra, you homosexual, blah blah." And I'm just like, well, yeah, I mean, but thankfully those days are in our past, right?
Right, right. So, and
Yeah,
having grown up with those, now we've got that thicker layer of skin, and we know how to stand up for the little baby fans when they need help with that.
exactly, 100%. So were you like a teenager when you were becoming a Godzilla fan, or was it earlier?
Oh, I was from like age 4.
Age 4? Okay.
But teenage years was when I started doing my writing, and it was awful. It was absolutely awful.
Oh my god, let's talk about fan fiction writing then. So, okay. So you were becoming more exposed to Werner's work and other fan fiction writers. So is that you said that was like the catalyst that got you to begin writing fan fiction,
Mhm.
right? So tell me more about like that process. Like what was it like for you?
Well, when I first started, it was pretty much just throwing mud at the wall. I mean, my spelling was horrible, my grammar was horrible, my storytelling abilities were horrible, and it was. I'm embarrassed to say you can still find the very first one I wrote somewhere out there. Don't do that. At the same time though, I found I really like doing it. I really like telling these stories. It's almost like the stories could kind of take on a life of their own, and
Yeah.
so the characters in it and the monsters, and it was one of those things. I really enjoyed this, and it was a great outlet to just get away from anything going on in life, or if I needed to express myself in some way, it was perfect. And so even though my first story was total crap, I kept writing at it. And it's one of those things if you're bad at something, just keep doing it over and over and over, and eventually you get better. And I like to think I'm a long way from where I started.
I mean, I've shared this story before, but like my exposure to Werner's work, like that started the process for me. But then I befriended Cindy, who you probably remember. We met like in 2005 or 2006. I kind of quickly became obsessed with her stories, and that's what got me to start improving my work because at that point in time, and I think as writers, we go through this as well. Like at first, we think that our writing is perfect. Like we're just like, oh my God, like this scene is beautiful. But now if we go back and read it, it's like, how are we not articulate? I don't understand. Cindy like gave me feedback and I was able to like receive that feedback and apply it and grow as a writer. And to this day, like I will tell because I teach writing for a living, I
Yeah.
will tell other colleagues and even students sometimes don't hate on fan fiction because that's how I started. Had it not been for writing Godzilla fan fiction, I would not have the career that I have right now. So, yeah, a lot of people will, write fan fiction and begin to develop their love of what they end up doing you sometimes, and I think that's amazing.
It's one of those things, if it does something good for somebody, if they enjoy it, let them enjoy it.
Obviously, as fan fiction writers, I think that one thing we take a lot of inspiration from like the films and the characters, obviously, because that's what fan fiction is, right? Like we are looking at the universe that we love and we are trying to expand it in some way. So, when it comes to specific films, what were the standout films for you that inspired your fan fiction?
Well, Godzilla versus MechaGodzilla from 1993 is one of my all-time favorites. I think that's and that one is one where everybody pretty much says, "Oh yeah, it's good," but it's never up there with the best. For me, I think it really deserves to get more
I think it's
praise.
one of the best film. I think it's one of the best films in the Heisei era.
Definitely is.
Yeah.
It's almost a perfect Godzilla movie from that era. The Gamera trilogy, stands out as kind of
Oh,
epitome of kaiju films.
yes.
So Gamera 3 in particular. Let's see.
Yes.
And there's all kinds of other ones. I mean, Terra Mechagodzilla, the original Godzilla versus Mothra. Of course, the original Godzilla. I mean, you can't not mention.
Oh
that.
yeah, right.
Godzilla 2000, which is a unappreciated gem.
It is.
Yeah.
People like often forget about that film, and it makes me feel so bad. Yeah.
It is a diamond in the rough. I have a lot of the Millennium series is not my favorite of the series that we've had so far, but that is one of my favorite movies.
It's interesting for the Millennium series. It never was my favorite either until I got older, and now the Kiryu saga is like those are like two of my favorite Godzilla films for some reason. They are so wonderful. Like, I mean, we all know why I love Godzilla Tokyo SOS because my queen is in it, right? I, as a Godzilla fan, have craved like episodic storytelling where another film picks up where a prior film left off. That's I think probably why I love the Heisei era so much.
Same here.
Like because and the Gamera trilogy too, like those stories are so interwoven that you see the character development, you see the changes that the world goes through those films and the kaiju, etc. So that's why I loved the Kiryu saga so much. For me, like those two films were huge influences. The Mothra trilogy for me, despite how whimsy they are with regard to their target audience, were very important to me as well. And I know one of my big frustrations when I was a kid and a teenager was that I always, for some reason, thought that they were connected to the Heisei Godzilla series because they were called the Heisei Mothra films. And I was so angry that they weren't. So through my stories, I wanted to make a connection between them.
Yeah.
I wanted to like retcon like the everything. And yeah, whether or not I succeeded, I will never know. But
you wrote some good ones back then. So yeah.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. I have always believed that you've at that time were a stronger writer than me. I thought you wrote some very strong work. Let's talk a little bit about like the meat of your series. When you started putting together your fanfics, did you start building on and noticing consistencies between the stories, etc.? What were those, and what were your goals with them?
Well, when I first started writing, remember I was just a kid throwing mud at the wall. So I don't know exactly that I had a full plan back then as a kid. I stopped writing for a while. I came back to it later on when I was in college because I had some battles with depression back then, as most of us do, and this was a good way to process that. So back then, I told this story, and these are probably the ones you remember, where it was all about the return of Godzilla and this girl who was connected to Godzilla somehow. I know it's cliche. Not the original story point, but I think I went in a pretty good direction with it.
I think you developed that better than the Heisei era did, because the Heisei era was so inconsistent with it. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so I pretty much just kept building on that. It's like, okay, what happens next? What's the next monster to show up, and so on. Well, I wrote that through college, and I walked away. Well, now that I'm back to writing, it was really around the time when the pandemic hit, and I was looking for a way to process everything. It was like, okay, what? I need some kind of outlet. I need something to keep my mind busy and to get all this stuff I'm thinking and feeling out. And so I started writing again. And I started with a whole new series. And it was, again, the return of Godzilla in the modern era. And the first story I did for this new series was called Godzilla Second Crisis. And the whole point of it was that, these monsters are metaphors. Godzilla is a stand-in for nuclear war for the most part, nuclear testing. But, he and the other monsters can stand in for really anything that terrifies us, anything we're trying to process. So, that existential dread. So I kind of, we'll see what kind of comments this gets. I kind of went with it with looking at how the pandemic was being handled in the early stages. And I said, what would happen if Godzilla returned and had to be confronted by Donald Trump?
How would he handle that crisis?
Oh, yes. As I was writing it, so you have this U.S. president who's looking at it as, well, that's someone else's problem. He's trying to get these nuclear power plants built. He doesn't want it interfering with that, so he's totally ignoring the problem. Well, of course, that brings the problem to the doorstep, just like ignoring the coronavirus did.
Yeah.
And so from there, it was really fun to explore, fun and terrifying in the same way, how this man dealing with this problem he ignored and then doing things that make it worse, how his psyche processes that, and how you just kind of see him steadily, deteriorating mentally as this is going on. And then, of course, everyone else is just caught up in the decisions that are being made. When you have this, horrible, threat, looming over a major American city, and the person that is supposed to be handling the crisis is not capable of doing so. So that was fun.
That sounds so interesting, honestly.
Thank you.
I love it.
Yeah, well, and from there, it was kind of, I've kind of gone with this. I said, let's make this reflective of the world we're living in. I'm kind of calling it the Age of Monsters. I'm not thrilled with that title, but I'm looking at the 21st century. Scientists are calling this era of global history the Anthropocene, the era where human impacts are affecting the planet. So you look at all we're dealing with: climate change, all sorts of other environmental degradation, the erosion of democracy around the world, the pandemic, of course, just all this scary stuff. War in Ukraine, the nuclear specter now hovering over us again with Putin. So, this is the perfect time to be telling these stories and to be, facing our fears as monsters and, trying to follow in what people like Honda and Tanaka and Tsuburaya tried to tell people with these stories, that you have to confront your monsters. And
I really appreciate you mentioning this as well, because obviously I think one common response that as Godzilla fans and as writers / artists, one thing that we often hear are people saying, keep politics out of Godzilla. when Godzilla's always been, a
Yeah.
socio-political commentary,
Mhm.
about like the state of the world, the state of nuclear
But
politics,
yeah,
etc.
my standard response to that is always, "Have you seen a Godzilla movie?" I mean,
Right, right. Well, and I know I've been very vocal. I mean, we know I'm a vocal person, but I get very vocal about fans who are also like attacking artists or writers in the fandom who are creating commentary based on, these current events through the lens of the franchise that we love. I personally don't think that there's anything wrong with that because I think it helps us process and understand what's going on. It helps us look at things from different perspectives. And historically speaking, writers and artists have always been the first groups of people to create social commentary about the things happening in the world, right? So why shouldn't we do that through
exactly.
Godzilla fan fiction? Why shouldn't we do that through art?
Well, and you look at it historically, this is why tyrants, dictators, fascists, whoever else, they always go for artists because they don't want that scene. It reminds me of the famous corrupt politician from New York, Boss Tweed, where they were the famous political cartoons were being made. He was saying, "Stop those pictures! My people can't read, but they can see those pictures."
Yep.
And art is and writing communicate ideas in a way that can get through to people on a very deep level. People think in pictures and stories and metaphors, and art helps shatter barriers in the mind like nothing else does. So,
Right. I agree completely. And this really has me thinking about certain decisions I made in my fan fiction in the past and why I made those decisions. Obviously, as an LGBTQ plus person, I really connected with the Heisei Godzilla era. I like the character Mickey Sagusa is like one of my favorite characters. And I was just so fascinated by the concept of like a person who has psychic abilities, who is othered in a way.
mhm,
So throughout my stories, I was processing my own identity through creating characters who had these abilities, right? Because that othered them in a way where I didn't have to be like, I'm super gay and feeling misunderstood.
kind of like the
Um,
X or
yeah, kind of like the X-Men. It was very X-Men-ish, now that I think about it. But that helped me process so much, and it helped me talk about it and develop an understanding about it. And I think that's why I personally think fan fiction is valuable because it does something not only for the author but also for the readers. Because like to this day, because back in like the mid 2000s, like I had a decent following for my fanfics, at least on like fanfiction.net and DeviantArt and Kaiju Galaxy. But every once in a while, like I will get like a comment on one of those old stories, or I'll get like an email being like, "Oh my god, like this story, like thank you for the story," and I'm just like, looking back on it now, it's terrible. But if it did something for someone, perfect. Like that makes me happy.
exactly. I mean, if someone gets something from it, then it's worth something.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to the whole reason why we like this series to begin with, and we deal with all the people who don't get it or whatever else.
Yep.
If people like it, if it's doing something good for them, if it makes them happy, and it's not hurting anybody, just enjoy.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. Obviously, I just gushed about Mickey Sagusa and Mothra and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like, are there specific characters that you really connected with
For sure.
or still do?
Well, of course, Diana from Gamera 3. I mean, that is probably one of the most well written characters in
Mhm.
the kaiju movie. And it's just such an emotional, intense journey all the way through that. With in the original, Dr. Sarazawa and the whole thing. I mean, that moment, that line from that movie. Then you have a decision that no man has ever faced. You have your fears that might become reality, and you have Godzilla that is reality.
Yep.
Yeah, that very, very powerful moment. So there's so many good characters in this, very long and overarching
Yeah.
series.
I feel like one of the prime criticisms the Godzilla franchise gets are the characters. Like a lot of people just kind of forget the characters because we all want to see monsters brawling and destroying
Oh yeah,
things, right? But I don't know, the older I get, the more and more I want like really wholesome characters. I want the kaiju to be developed as well as characters. And I think that's kind of why I've really liked the Monsterverse
yeah,
because don't get me wrong, the Monsterverse has its issues.
oh yeah,
But I think they did a great job developing the characters slash personalities of the giant monsters.
very much so. King of the Monsters, for all the flack that it got critically, as far as bringing those monsters to life and bringing their personalities through.
Hmm.
Perfect. You could tell it was handled by fans. I still take a little bit of an issue with Rodan as Starscream. But Rodan's my boy. He deserves better than that. But
Yeah, Rodan could have at least gotten some. I was hoping that Rodan, Godzilla, and Mothra would have together. I
yeah,
mean, granted, I know they didn't want it to be Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster 2.0. I get
right.
that, but
Well, what's wrong with
yeah,
that? That would have been fine.
yeah, and of course, like my issue with it is that Mothra wasn't in it enough,
Yeah.
in my opinion. I just get so angry, David. I get so angry over the Mothra versus Rodan battle and how
Hmm.
fleeting it was and how like it would pan away all the time. I was just like, stop it. I want to see them. Like shit. Like I want to see them battling in the sky. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Ugh. Thank
Well,
you. I needed that.
well, you're.
I needed to rant.
I guess the thing that bothers me with it is you can very much tell it's that these movies are being made by, this is going to sound awful the way I'm about to say it, by the country that dropped the bombs rather than the country that was hit by the bombs.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a shift in that storytelling perspective.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest criticisms of the MonsterVerse, like the fact that the nuclear allegory falls away. And I know King of the Monsters got a lot of flack because weapons of mass destruction were just tossed around in that film like they were no big deal,
Oh
not
yeah,
at all, you
yeah.
know.
And then on
And
the flip
yeah,
side, you have Shin Godzilla, which is really the modern nuclear horror,
yeah,
coming on the heels of Fukushima. And I've noticed there are a lot of people in this country, a lot of fans are like, I don't like Shin Godzilla. I don't like the way it's done. I don't understand why they went in this direction. It's like,
right.
well, you got to understand what they went through in that crisis.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
for sure. Well, yeah, and people just don't take those types of things into consideration when they aren't directly impacted by, those types of events and situations or that cultural trauma, right?
right. One of those things. Kind of be glad we can just enjoy the
Yeah.
lighter side of this, and that the darker side is not as impressed on our psyche
Yeah,
as we should.
agreed. How has Godzilla shaped you into the person you are today?
He's kind of my muse. It's one of those things I keep coming back to him. I'm not aspiring at this point in my life to be a professional writer. I'm not, interested in doing anything with film or anything like that. Kind of happy in my own lanes in life, but this is kind of my outlet with my stories and my little fantasy worlds to escape to when I need to just unwind. And Godzilla has given me that. He's there when I need to get away. He's there when I need to process something dark, when I need something destroyed, when I need, some enemy defeated. He's always there in that regard. And I think that's kind of a good thing for us to have. I mean, obviously, you don't want to take it too seriously and go too far down the rabbit hole. That's always a danger to lose your bearings in life. But
Oh yeah, for sure.
it's perfectly harmless to have something like that. I think we all need it to some degree.
The way okay, so I totally got goosebumps the way you were describing the like when I have an enemy I need to defeat, when I have a darkness that I need to confront, Godzilla is there as a vehicle for you to do that. Like that was really powerful to me. That resonated with me a lot as a fan fiction writer, because that's always what I would that's why Godzilla was so crucial to me as well. So, do you collect Godzilla memorabilia by any chance?
No, not really, but I always am a sucker for a good Godzilla shirt. So
Right. And it's funny, I'm not even wearing one today.
we found this in New York, and I had to have it. So
Right.
just in a random gift shop.
I get most of my I will sometimes get my Godzilla shirts at G Fest, but the problem is that they never have the size I need. So either it's like it looks like I'm wearing a girdle, or it looks like I'm wearing a bag. So it's like, okay.
Now, every now and then we'll end up with something, and my spouse will surprise me with something like Godzilla Monopoly or something like that.
Oh.
Buddy, there was one time I should have thought to bring it in here. But there was one point he got this big stuffed Godzilla, and he just kind of like left it in. And you see the terrariums here behind us. So this is another one of my little hobbies, is collecting little terrarium critters.
Oh.
And my spouse is always living in dread. What am I going to bring home next? Well, one day I opened this door, and that stuffed Godzilla was sitting in a chair looking at me. And I just kind of opened it and shut the door real fast. And like, oh, that's what that feels like.
That is that's really precious though when you think about it.
Yeah,
I know, like my partner, that's the easy thing, the thing that he knows that I will love the most if he gets me those things for like holidays, so on and so forth. Godzilla plushies. Yeah, I think last year he got me like Funko Pops and stuff like that. I was just like, yes, give me the Godzilla stuff. I will find a place for it. My only stipulation is that I am not allowed to decorate the house beyond my office.
that's kind of the situation in here.
So, what advice do you have for Godzilla fans who might be new to the franchise or new to the fandom in general?
Just watch every movie you can and just have fun with it. That's the main thing. And if anyone thinks it's weird or anything like that, screw them. Just,
Yeah.
Enjoy what you enjoy.
And there are spaces out there, right? Like what we're talking about here, like us having this conversation, this is a space for you to, because
Yeah,
we will accept you and adore you and celebrate Godzilla with you, right?
sure.
Now,
Come hang out on my DeviantArt page. I'll talk with anybody on there. So,
right, and if you'll be able to find that in the description section of the video, everyone, by the way, definitely go check out David's DeviantArt. Maybe if I'm brave enough, I'll throw my link in there too to my DeviantArt. But so, last but certainly not least, what advice do you have for Godzilla fans who might be interested in writing Godzilla fan fiction?
keep at it. Your first thing you're going to write, and you might love it, and you might think it's crap. Either way, that's fine. But you're just going to get better the more you do at it. Just keep writing, and if that's what you want to do, just keep building with each each story, even if it's not a continual storyline. It just builds off what you did the first time around. So
Yeah. Well, and that's how you improve too. Like you
yeah,
just that consistency, right?
exactly.
And of course, I need to practice what we're preaching because I really want to write Godzilla fan fiction again, and I just I've I've maybe written maybe one or two fanfics in like the past several years, so I need to get my poop in a group and actually start doing it again. So maybe I can derive some inspiration through our conversation
I hope so.
and through reading your work.
You need to
So
come back to us. We need to rebuild this fan fiction community.
I would love that. Go join Kaiju Galaxy, everybody.
Yeah,
Please.
yeah.
Yes, there will be a link in the description section of the video. Shameless self-promotion.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Exactly.
So,
Well, Dave, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such a fun conversation. And if you're ever interested in coming back and having another conversation on
I
this
would love.
show,
I would
I
absolutely love to.
right, that would be awesome.
And
So
I,
thank you for that.
and I hope you and everyone else will check out the new story that I'm start writing.
Definitely.
Self promotion. It's going to be. I get to make the announcement here. I just finished with Godzilla versus King Kong: Worlds Collide. That was the last one I wrote.
Which is an amazing title, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't really satisfied with it.
I like it. I think it's a great title.
But so now the next one that I'm gonna be starting on soon is Godzilla versus Daimajin: Wrath and Sorrow.
Ooh, how suspenseful sounding. An unexpected pairing. I have watched those, yes.
They're fantastic.
They are very good and overlooked, I think, a lot
Very
too.
much so. Very much so.
So maybe through that piece, you might ensnare some Daimajin fans, right? So go check out David's fan fiction. Go check out Kaiju Galaxy, everyone. Remember, Growing Up with Godzilla is every first and third Sunday of each month at 4 p.m. So thank you for listening and have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Take care, guys.